Hello, family. How's everyone doing? Hello. Y'all, I'm telling y'all, today has been a day for me. So it's been a long day. That's all I have to say. I'm kind of waiting around for Pastor Kelly. Hold on, let me make sure I finish getting everything set up. We have been trying to get him together because he's never used StreamYard before. So I'm just waiting for him. So how's everybody doing? How was everybody's Shabbat? I hope everybody had an awesome Shabbat. Mine was quite interesting, but it was still good. But I am waiting around for Pastor Kelly, so bear with me. Hey, Solomon. Hit that like button, y'all, if y'all have not hit it. I'm gonna wait around for him. I think he may need to call me and tell me when he's ready. I hope everybody had a good Shabbat. Hold on. Let me make sure. Hold on. My house is active again, y'all. It's interesting. Letting him know. All right. So today is going to be interesting. It's going to be a very, 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 very interesting conversation. So the conversation is going to delve around something that me and Pastor Kelly have been talking about for a good little minute. He gave me some insight on his viewpoint as it pertains to, I'm gonna wait because the conversation is going to be very good. It's going to be good. I'm gonna need everybody to be ready. If you have not hit that like button, please do. Why is it only showing 4 people out here, but it looks like it's more people in the comments? Hold on. Let me see. I know Friday night, Saturday night. Okay, cool. It wasn't updating properly. But this is going to be an interesting conversation. This is going to be interesting. He's going to give us some insight on some. I don't want to let the cat out the bag yet. I'm going to wait till he gets here. And when he does, it's going to be an interesting convo though, family. Very interesting. So, yep, I see that. Yep, 39 people. Y'all hit that like button. It's 42 in here. You know what? What's so interesting is I keep looking at my main screen and not realizing that I am using StreamYard. So I can see everything on StreamYard. So I got to get used to that, y'all. Pray for me here. All right. We're going to wait around for him. Hold on. All right, I'm waiting on Pastor Kelly. My house is active, y'all. Hold on. Hey, you're gonna have to text me when you're ready because I forgot I'm not gonna see you. So text me when and I add you. You ready? Okay. No, don't rush. I can talk to everybody. Just yeah, I'm sorry. I had y'all on unmuted and was talking to Pastor Kelly on the phone. So this conversation is gonna be interesting. We all we talk about eschatology a lot. First, welcome to Let's Talk with Sister E. Dorora, why do you have the Z's up, sis? First, I want to know, why do you have the Z's up? Are you sleepy or It's too much going on in the back. Deborah, don't go to sleep on me. Come on now. This is gonna be fun. I'm just joking. But so let me do a roll call before I get started. All right, it's a lot of names. I'm finna go through them. James Smith, Antonio Solomon, Susan Aviyad, Kiris Elizabeth Mack, Child of the Book, Rochelle, hello, Matt to the Ben Israel, oh God, Rahama, how are you, my sister? D, I don't know. Wim 5465, Israel Awake. Darnell Black Shear, what's going on? Let me see. CH James Smith, Timothy Price, what's going on? Antonio Solomon 145. I think I called that already. Giovanni, what is it? Giovanni Vive. I must mispronounce that. Kahil, Just Reese, Andre, what's going on? Dorora, Kevin Malone, and Gatherers of Nations. So I've called everyone. So Pastor Kelly is here. So he getting ready to text me. This is interesting. Greetings up next. So I'm gonna go ahead and add him in here. And I don't want to add him until he knows he's ready. So I saw his face, but he hopped off real quick. Hopefully I'll see him again. Hold on. I'm going to, should I add him? I'm gonna wait. So, family. Okay, he said he's ready. Adding him now. All right. Hello, Pastor Kelly. I got you in here.
All right. Peace and blessings. How's it going?
It's going good. With that smooth voice, my brother.
I got the worst voice. I cannot stand hearing my voice.
Whatever. You got that smooth voice. You said peace. Hey, y'all. First, let's welcome Pastor Kelly on. Say something to the people. You know, everybody knows you, but still say something to the folks.
Peace and blessings. I'm going to do my Restitution invitation. Good night. Nah. How's it going, everyone? Peace and blessings. Hope you guys had a great Shabbat.
Dorora said you sound like you still sleep. No, you don't. My brother. Yes. How was your Shabbat?
Everything was blessed. You know, anytime you just doing things with for the Most High, and you're actually honoring it, you know, you're liberated. So we had a great time.
That's good. I will be in your parts on next weekend. I booked everything. So I will be at Pastor Kelly's assembly on Saturday. Did I say Sunday? I meant Saturday. I'll be there on
Sunday. You better watch out now. You say Sunday, boy. Oh, man. You'll start all kinds of rumors and, you know, see, I told you he a Christian pastor and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, people are, they're ready to throw charges at me.
Man. When I said, I was like, oh, you know, I'm going to get emails. I'm like, oh, wow. You know what? Since I've been doing this, I've noticed that I have to be careful with the things that I say sometimes, because some people take it the wrong way and I have to be clarified. But yeah. Yes, y'all, it will be Saturday. I will be at Pastor Kelly's assembly. So this will be interesting. What's so interesting, y'all, this will be my first time meeting Pastor Kelly face to face. I have never met him face to face, but I feel like I grew up with him. So let's get started. So the title of this is called Birth of a Nation. The reason I'm saying this is because it's kind of like a conversation based off of a couple of videos that you've done. It's anything but the Negro. And it goes into the understanding of what Revelation means, as far as the end of days, what the mark of the beast is. And I learned a lot from you. Especially, I don't want to get too deep because I know you got to go into explaining what we've been talking about. So you want to get started, or?
Sure. One of the things that's always driven me is the prophecies of the scriptures. Even before the Most High allowed me to transition our ministry from out of Christianity
Mm-hmm.
over into where we are now, I always was fascinated with the prophecies. And you name it, I done read every kind of prophecy book out there, from end time prophecy, series, and the Left Behind series and all those different things. So I always had a fascination with the prophecies. But what I've come to learn is that the way that we've been taught prophecies, the prophetic doctrines, is through the lens of the perpetrators.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense. Versus looking at prophecy through Israel. If we really understand the Bible itself starts off with the narrative of telling us how everything have come about, and then how the covenant was transitioned from Adam down to Israel. So when we really view the entire, get an understanding of the Bible, it's really showing us how the Most High selected Israel to be the priesthood for the entire world, for all the nations. And so we see the rise, the fall of Israel, and we see the prophecies that are telling us how the Most High is going to restore Israel. And so once I began to um, um, really see the scriptures for what it is, in other words, coming out of Christianity, no longer seeing the scriptures through the views of those that have done so much evil on this earth. I mean, think about it. We're taught, when we think about Revelation, when we think about the church, we include the Catholic Church, we
Yes.
include Christianity, we include every oppressor that had created so much evil on this earth and enslaved our people. But then when we see church, we include all these perpetrators and their descendants.
Yep.
So making that transition over, and then really studying the Hebrew language and making it a point to see things from the Hebraic perspective, and knowing that, and really understanding culture and so forth, and how it ties into the things that the oral traditions that was handed down to me through my family, about being Israelites. But with me, when I was young, I still got caught up in the whole Christianity thing. I got caught up in, it doesn't matter, you
Yeah.
know, uh, the blood was red. You know what I mean? I'm sure you
Yeah.
guys heard that before. What does it matter? The blood was red. Even though I was told my heritage, I was told through family traditions on why our ancestors did what they did down in Savannah, Georgia. So, with that being said, um, I had to completely undo all the layers of the teachings that I've received from the Christianity, on the arena of Christianity,
Yeah.
from the schools I've attended. I started seminary when I was 14 years old. I was part of the National Baptist Convention. That's what my church was, part of the National Baptist Convention. I sat up under Dr. T. Van Bureau at Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church, right? And prior to that, um, went through a number of different religions, from Jehovah Witnesses to Islam, when my mother was really trying to find herself. So I got subjected to a lot of different religions up in
Mhm.
the New Jersey area.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, once I started taking the lens from, that Eurocentric lens off the text, and started focusing on Israel, right? Then that's when the scriptures began to open up. That's when I began to see the prophecies from a completely different lens.
Yes.
And that's part of the problem right now, that we're not understanding that the very people that have raped our people, that have murdered our people, that have kidnapped our people, that have subjected our people to all this ugliness, right? They are putting their face on the front end of prophecy, and have included themselves in what is called the church,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's not so. The Most High makes it clear that there's curses that's set aside for the nations that have went overboard with the judgment that the Most High allowed Israel to endure. So once I began to uh, uh, kind of like, how can I put it? Come out of that system,
Yes.
get that stuff from out of me,
Take
you
that
know,
Eurocentric lens off.
exactly. Once I began to do that, and I'm telling you, the scriptures, I see the scriptures in a whole totally different angle. I
Mm-hmm.
actually see um, it from not being ambiguous to being non-ambiguous. You know what I mean? The way that we were taught the scriptures, it was filled with ambiguity, because it was very generic, very generalized. But now, when you understand, you don't have to be a master of Hebrew, but if you make it a point to study key words in Hebrew, you will begin to see the scriptures from a completely different lens.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see the Bible is all about Israel.
Yes.
It's about how the covenant was created, and again, how the Most High handed down His covenant through the attrition of the different layers, the different generations, and how it
Mm-hmm.
finally got to Israel. So that's what really gave me a completely different understanding of how we view prophecy. So bringing that into the book of Revelation and bringing that into some of the things that we're talking about, even with the 400-year prophecy, right? I began to see the 400-year prophecy from a different perspective.
Yes.
That's why I said I believe in a 400-year prophecy, but not in the way that many have taught it,
Yep.
and viewed it, because many viewed the 400-year prophecy almost like similar to what you're taught in church.
Mm-hmm.
I understood once I started reading and studying, going through Torah, going through the prophets, and you see that the Most High always had a plan, right? Whenever Israel went into captivity, He had a plan to bring them out of captivity. And it always started from within Israel, not outside of Israel.
Yep.
So the Roman Catholic Church is not going to restore Israel. None of these groups are going to, restore Israel. It's going to start from within Israel. That's why the Hebrew Israelite Messiah made it clear. He said that, He came to bring what? Salvation for His people. So if He said that, then we have to understand that it didn't change. It's not changing. It's not generic.
It
And when
didn't.
we view it from that perspective, then we can start pinpointing history. We can start actually going into the historical books. We can start looking at the scripture, and then we can start seeing how prophecy has been fulfilled right before our eyes. Everything that Christ talks about, we see the fulfillment of it.
Yep. Yep. And the interesting part is you brought up something, that 400-year prophecy. And I think the light bulb, and I don't want to go too far, step ahead in our conversation, but when you first and foremost, when I used to read the Bible as far as New Testament, Old Testament, I didn't get a clear understanding because I looked at it from a universal standpoint, which is the universal church, which is Catholicism. But when I understood who I was and understood that God had a people and He was going to go to His people first, because people forget that in everything that they said Jew, then the Gentile. It was never all. It was always Jew, then the Gentile. When I really read it and understood, it opened my eyes. One thing I said when I got done reading Old Testament, I said it was all about the Israelites. And it's a shame that at the time, I was like 39 years old when I came to the realization that the entire Old Testament was about them. And the entire New Testament was about them as well. We've been taught for so long that it's just about everybody. Not to say everybody that does not have access to Hamashiach. Everybody has access. But yet and still, He said, what? I come unto the lost tribe of Israel. Even when you look at Him, when He ascended, who did He have around Him? Israelites. It was never the case of, even when you look at his disciples, it was not one Gentile in the midst of His 12 disciples. It was all Israelites. When I came to the realization, I said, this book is about His people. Now, if people choose to, you can pass now. If people choose to cling upon the Hebrew Israelite Messiah, Hamashiach, they have access to the kingdom. But ultimately, still, it was all about him. But let's start with that 400-year prophecy. You want to start there? Because you brought something up a couple of days ago when we were talking that kind of changed my whole viewpoint. And it's going to change the talking points. You want to start there? Because again, that right there was the thing that kind of, it floored me when you said it. Because I understood now. I mean, I had a light bulb moment. So
Definitely. Let me go ahead and pull this up here.
y'all be ready, because when he give it to you, I'm gonna tell y'all. When he said it to me on, this was what, Friday or Thursday, one of those days, I was talking to Pastor Kelly, and we were talking about, and I'm not gonna tell you how he's gonna explain it. I'm gonna let him explain it. But when he said it to me, that light bulb went off. Every argument and debate that we've had with people about 400-year prophecy stops there. Because the way he explained it, I said, wow, there is no way to argue around that. Oh man, I'm not gonna tell y'all. That's all I gotta say. Have you even explained this yet before? Because some people may know already.
Well, some of the people may know because I did I kind of went into beast mode last night, so to speak. And I think I taught that lesson for about 3.5 hours.
I was in and I was out because I did a live, because I had something I had to do with Yakoba, and then I hopped on. So I said I was gonna get caught up, but I was trying to finish up on anything but the Negro. But you can get started, and I'll chime in because, like I said, I've listened to so much of that one and the Revelation 1 video that you did. So
now, quick question. You still see my video, right? I mean, see my image, right? You don't see my screen or anything like that,
no, I
right?
did not. No.
Okay. Just want to make sure. So,
If you share,
I can share it too.
I think so. Do you see share at the bottom of your screen?
Share screen.
Yep. And
Okay.
if you hit share, and I'm just going to explain to you, you hit the share screen, and at the top you get your entire screen, application window, or whatever tab. If you're using a web browser, if it's Chrome tab or a Safari tab, you click that and then you highlight what you're trying to show. I don't show entire screen because if I did, I would show everything. But I usually go like to the application window, or I go to the Chrome tab if I'm using Chrome. Or I'm using Chrome now. So
Okay. I'm going to pull up this here, and I'm going to do a share screen, not on my entire background, like you said. Let me see, share screen. Let's see. Application window.
is it a browser you're going to show? Something within your web browser, or is it just a file?
It's just going to be from my PowerPoint.
Okay. Oh, have you opened your PowerPoint already?
Can you see it on your screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah. Okay, so this is coming from what I taught last night, and actually,
do I need to add it?
This is embedded in a number of my.
Okay.
What's that?
Do I need to add it, or are you going to add it?
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it, but they can't see it yet.
Oh, you can add it. You can add it.
Okay, you're good.
All right. So can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see it. Can't you see it?
Okay, because see on my screen, because I'm using my tablet, so I just see my my presentation. So,
okay.
But yeah, just long as you guys can see it.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a section that is titled "Strange Creatures." Blessed is he who makes strange creatures. So I'm not going to explain that. I'll just encourage those who haven't seen the video I did last night. Go to We Are Woke Now YouTube channel, and you'll see this live presentation there, and I fully explain the strange creatures. But let me just go to the prophecy here. This is coming from the book of Revelation, chapter 13, and this will tie into what you made mention. And it says here, chapter 13, verse 1, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And it goes on to say, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Right. And then I reiterate the point, explaining the horns and the 10 crowns. And so there's a little nugget there, as you see here. But going back into here, verse 2, it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. So you make a note here, there's a lot of key nuggets here, especially when you get down to where it says as the mouth of a lion. So highlight the mouth of a lion, really highlight that, because that is important. And it goes on to say, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So a beast rise up out of the sea. And I'm just going to be brief with this. When we understand the beast that rises up out of the sea, and start understanding the history of the Vikings, we can really start seeing the influence of the Norse religion, because we see the influence in Christianity, right? Santa Claus, we see the combination of really Santa Claus is really Odin, right? And that's coming out of the Norse religion. We see how the days of the week have been shifted from pointing to the planets to pointing to these different Norse gods. So it's so many layers to this, but I'm just going to keep it simple here for the sake of time. So this is an article, the Viking explorers who beat Columbus to America, right? And this is what it says. And this is coming from history.com. Nearly 500 years before the birth of Christopher Columbus, a band of European sailors left their homeland behind in search of a new world. Their their high proud Viking ship sliced through the cobalt waters of the Atlantic Ocean. And as wind billowed the ship or the boat's enormous single sail after traversing unfamiliar waters, it goes on to say, the Norsemen aboard the wooden ship spied a new land, dropped anchor, went ashore, half a millennium before Columbus discovered America. Now we have to understand, Christopher Columbus never visited North America, this part of the America. So I want to make that clear. So those Vikings, it says, those Vikings' feet may have been the first Europeans. I want to make sure we understand that, because we already know that our people have already made it to these soils well before any of these Europeans, right? When we start understanding even the history about Manson Musa, Timbuktu, and I have another presentation when I show ships, proving the names of ships and the types of ships that came to the different areas and how there was a trade going on back then. But nevertheless, what we see here says those Vikings may have been the first Europeans, ones to ever have touched North American soil. So remember, the dragon gave him his power. All right, let's deal with this Norse religion some more, because when you think about the Norse religion, you start thinking about Odin, you start thinking about Loki and Thor, and we see that all embedded in like Marvel comics and so forth. So this article says here, it says the great beast, Jormungand, which is the Midgard serpent, is a snake or dragon who lives in the ocean that surrounds Midgard. The visible world, so enormous is he that his body forms a circle around the entirety of Midgard. So we understand the Vikings at the front of their ships, they had what? The head of the serpent. Okay. So now we're going to deal with this beast, this other beast here. It says here, the beast like unto a leopard, right? That is Germany. And Daniel describes this beast having 4 heads. So when you understand this beast from a prophetic perspective, 4 beasts, right? Well, 4 heads on one beast represents the rise and fall of that nation. So we know that Germany had several Reichs, in other words, several wars, that they had to recover from. So the beast likened to a leopard, Germany, right? And then this is coming from Newsweek, April 9th, 1984. Since the time of Charlemagne, the area that is now Germany has been the pivot of European history. In the past 120 years, the Germans have dominated Europe intellectually, industrially, and militarily. Dominion was given to the leopard. Then we have the feet of a bear. That's Russia. And here's a Time magazine article dealing with Russia when Russia boycotted the Olympics. But you notice that they have the bear, right? And then we see his mouth as the mouth of a lion. Now, understand this. This is the image. This is the country that had the lion as a national logo, right? A national symbol, UK, Great Britain. So here, this is coming from their website. National animal, the lion, because the lion is symbolic of bravery. It was frequently used to depict the courageous warriors of medieval England. Today, it remains the national animal of the country and is used extensively in sports, team names, logos. You get the gist of it. So we see that the national image for Great Britain is the lion, right? And there's an image right there. So the lion is the symbol of the United Kingdom, right? So now when we take this further and focus on this animal, right? We go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 4. The first was like a lion. So when we understand that word like, it means having the characteristics. It's not exactly a lion, right? But the characteristics of a lion. Remember, the warning that was given to us saying that Satan goes to and from, he roams, right? Goes to and from, roaming as a lion, right? As a roaring lion, saying that he's not the lion, but guess what? He has the characteristics of the lion. He's trying to mimic the lion. But nevertheless, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. This is key, because now what we're seeing here is what is called the Revolutionary War. We see the lion as being Great Britain. And when we see eagle's wings, guess what? That is still the image, right, of the United States, the eagle. And then it says, I beheld till the wings were plucked off the lion. Now we see a separation here. And it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And so here we see here, and I'm going to bring it up here. Now I just reiterated this point here, but we are witnessing what? The birth of the United States. Yep. That is the key to understanding the 400-year prophecy. The birth of the United States. See, many try to undermine and debunk the 400-year prophecy by stating that, hey, slavery started, the first slave transaction occurred in 1452 when the Pope, right, gave permission to the Portuguese, right, to go to enter into a deal with the Moors, right? In that deal, you had the Moors that had given the Portuguese 11 Negro slaves in exchange for their prisoners of war, right? So when we understand that, right, that was 1452. So if you do the numbers is going to be off. When you do the numbers, and we do know that before our ancestors were sent to this part of the Americas, they were sent to Brazil, South America. They were sent to, Jamaica and many of the islands, Haiti, Barbados, right? And other parts of the world, France, Spain, Germany. We were scattered all abroad. India, also China, because many don't understand that we were also sold to Chinese, Japanese. We were sold all around this world. And prior to that, you also had the Arabic slave trade, right? That started before the transatlantic slave trade. So what we're seeing here, what's important about this prophecy, is the birth of the United States.
Correct.
That's the key.
And
This prophecy is dealing with what? The 400-year prophecy is dealing with what? The birth of the United States, and seeing how even with the United States, even when around the world, when they started what? Doing away with slavery, what did the United States decide to do? They decided to create what? Breeding, mm, you know, you know, plantations, so to speak.
yep,
It started what? Breeding slaves like we were our ancestors, like they were animals.
yep, and that's key. And I know you're teaching, but one of the things that when you said that to me, the light bulb went off because I said there was no other nation that. When you look at the slavery, as far as the Arabic slave trade, even the Egyptian slave trade, these countries or these nations were already developed. But this was, I think, the first time in time, and tell me if I'm wrong, where our people were put in a nation that was not developed, and we developed it with our own hands, our own blood, our own sweat. It was never the case of it was our. So we built this nation from nothing, and that was the biggest thing that popped up in my head when you said that. I said, this is the first time, because even in the Bible, these nations were already established. We established a nation. So that's why I was like, really. And when you talk about the birth, we birthed this nation. It was just, you had the few colonies. I think the first one was what, Virginia. And
Exactly.
you had other colonies that came about, but they were not unified. And through our, blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors, it was an established nation that this machine is still driving off of. So,
Exactly.
so,
Exactly. You hit it right on the nail.
so you can. I'm sorry, I didn't want to stop you, but that was one of the key points that I got from it.
Yeah, and so you're absolutely correct. I mean, when you think about it, Great Britain was already established.
Hmm.
Ukraine, all these different countries were well established, but the United States was not established at that time, right? And what did they do? They developed this entire country, this entire nation was built off of free labor.
Hmm. Yep.
And we could do this another time in terms of debunking this Irish slave narrative that is circulating, with many of them trying to change history by saying, well, the Irish were slaves here first. No,
Hmm.
they used them first, which is an absolute, and I'm going to say it like it is, it's an absolute lie.
It is.
And I have a video on on the channel that completely debunks those narratives. And I challenge anyone who think that they know what they're talking about. I'll challenge them and prove to them that they are completely wrong and they're twisting history and don't have a clue about what history is. They're being very deceptive,
Hmm.
right? And so, with that being said, so when we understand what happened in this country, right, even during the Revolutionary War, right? Our ancestors, the men fought in the war to help liberate the United States, while at the same time, during that time, over 500,000 of our people were enslaved, scattered throughout the 13 colonies. So they were still getting free labor, but then we're helping the country to liberate and become free from Great Britain, but yet we were still enslaved. Many of our ancestors went right back on the slave plantations,
Hmm.
were lied to. If you understand Savannah, there was a major battle down in Savannah that our ancestors were instrumental. They were very instrumental in what liberating and keeping things at bay there. And many of our ancestors were sent from there, went over to Haiti and liberated Haiti, right? The first minister or mayor or leader over in Haiti came from Savannah, which was an Igbo slave.
Hmm.
So when we start understanding the depth of it, we can see that this entire country benefited from
Mm-hmm.
free labor off our backs. No other country. And as you pointed out, when you look at history, this nation was completely built off the backs of our ancestors.
Yep, yep, and it's so interesting because it talks about it in the Bible. When Christ comes, the blood is going to cry out from the ground. Of the martyrs, and people look at martyrdom being what happened um, during the Roman rule, but we're talking about the blood of the ground here, because it's almost like, what's interesting, it's almost like, how you plant a seed and you give it water for it to grow. It was blood on this ground to help this nation grow. So it was built on blood, and that's one of the things that I thought about after we talked. I said the nation was, and you're getting ready. Oh man, I'm about to slip into that. Okay, I'm gonna let you finish because I just thought about it. You probably gonna talk about that, right?
What point you want me to bring out?
It's talking about the uh uh the harlot and the blood, drunk
Okay.
blood.
Yeah, I could touch on that as well. So right now we see the importance of the United States. Right, when we deal with the 400-year prophecy, we have to make sure that we understand that that 400-year prophecy is dealing with the birth of the United States.
Mhm.
Right, it's not saying at the beginning of slavery, because we know we were already enslaved. We know that we were already scattered when we understand the destruction of Jerusalem, right? Understanding that we were scattered, when we start dealing with 70 AD and so forth. So we already know that part. We do know about when the Moors ruled um, Spain. We do know about the how the Moors enslaved our people. Our people in many countries were referred to as the wandering sheep herders, the wandering shepherds, basically. And so we were subjected to slavery, but it wasn't the same type of slavery as the transatlantic slave trade,
Yep.
right? They were not doing like dividing families up like that, But even though it was a lot of cruelty, I'm not going to take away from it. It was a lot of cruelty happening during the Arabic slave trade, which is still going on to this day. All right. So let's deal with another point as you brought it up. Let me get to that in the point of the slide here. Let me see here. Let's see.
And I didn't want to go too ahead, but then that made so much sense that this nation, it what I mean, what helped this nation grow was blood. And someone said blood sacrifice, and that's how you have to look at it. I mean, there is no other slavery that can. I don't think any other nation had to go through that level of trauma that has followed us generationally. I mean, a generation upon generation, we've dealt with the trauma from our ancestors being over here. And you got to think it had to have been something so traumatic that is still um, chasing us now. Um,
Exactly.
yep.
And I will challenge anyone that will try to say that other countries went through exactly what our people went through, right? Show me how other countries, people were being kidnapped, right? Raped, kidnapped, placed on this ship, right? And even before they got to that portion of getting on this ship, right? Many of our ancestors, millions died before they even made it to that portion of the first leg. You know, show me a group of people that went through that was being held in what is called baracas. This is where you get the word coon from. And this is why I have a lot of problems, a major problem when I hear people refer to our people refer to other people within our community as coons. Because coons, if you understand the word coon, matter of fact, that was also the the symbol for what is called the Whig Party, which is the original Republican Party before the Republicans came into play.
Hmm.
Right? It was called they had raccoon as their logo, or so they had used the term coon. But when we take it beyond that, we'll understand that the word coon comes from baraka, right, which is a Portuguese word, and that was the place that our ancestors were stored in, before they put them on these ships. And if you actually take a look at those storage areas, they was really small, no windows, no type of ventilation. They crammed us up in there. And if you study the history and see some of the horror stories, some of the stuff that I read that you can, the witnesses or the writings, they said that you could see mucus coming from up, coming from under the seals because of how sick many of our ancestors began to get, because they were stored inside this place. There was 50 to 100 people in like a 50 by 50 holding place.
Yep.
Made out of cement, right?
Yep.
And then they were what? Placed on these ships, like sardines, crammed in like sardines. Yep. And if you study the history, you would even see the writings where it says sharks will follow these ships.
Yeah.
Because that's how, millions of our ancestors were thrown overboard. Some of them decided that they were not going to submit to slavery. So they decided to jump overboard voluntarily. But nevertheless, not a single country went through what we went through.
Yep.
Not a single Irish person that have descendants that came here as indentured servitudes. They came here in an agreement. They were not had to go through what we had to go through. They did not go through chattel slavery. Their seeds, when they had children, they were not subjected to being enslaved. They had a 6 to 7 year contract, and the agreement was getting a free ride to this country, and many of them would get what? Land and properties and resources in return.
And I just want to show how slaves look. I'm gonna go back to your screen. But I found something where it showed you how they were packed in there on top of each other. And it was just, I don't know if you can see the screen, but I just wanted to show that, and then you can go back to showing your screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we need to see. And the height of it was no higher than 5 feet.
Man.
Right? So not only were they crammed in it lying down, but it was no taller than 5 feet. Now, I'm almost 6 feet tall. I'm just under 6 feet. I'm 5'11" and some change, right? I tend to round it off to 6 feet. But still, I cannot even imagine being in a low ceiling like that. All right? So when you start really understanding the horrors, no other nation went through what our people went through.
Wow.
And that's a fact. And we're not even touching on the depth of what happened to us. The rapes, not just of the women, but of the men and of the children, because many of those slave owners, they were pedophiles, they were homosexuals, and they were raping not just the women, but raping the men as well.
Yeah.
So we really want to understand, and I know I send people in a frenzy every time I say this, but when we want to understand the true rapture, our people were raptured, because the word rapture means kidnap. It means to rape. And our people were raped. We were kidnapped and taken from our territories and brought into a land, as you see through that place that's called a point of no return.
Yes.
And even in that place, below it in the basement, guess what? That's where you see the baracas there, the storage. And they said the stench is still in that place.
Wow.
To this day.
Wow. And you know what? It took me, you have to internalize it and think about it from a standpoint, if that happened to us now. The trauma that would come where, let's say me and my daughter were out and someone kidnapped us, threw us on a ship, and I had to endure seeing her on the ship, chained, and all of us packed in there, and I couldn't help her. Or even worse, she's in one ship and I'm in another, and I never see her again. These are people, when I listen to the slave narratives, there are individuals that say they never saw their parents again. That's traumatic for anybody to go through. You're normal, you're going through your normal life. This isn't something you would even fathom. And then one day you just go outside, let's say, and go to the grocery store. Let's say they did it again, and they start snatching us up, and they separate you from your child, and you never see them again. and the trauma you're enduring, you're only imagining what your child is going through.
Exactly. And just the on to that point, excuse me, to that point, one of the things that many of us don't know, what our ancestors had to teach the children at the age of 4 and 5 years old, that should their village get invaded by the colonizers, they had to teach their children a disaster recovery plan. And that plan was to run into the woods, stay in the woods, stay hidden, right? And if their village was sacked per se, so now those children have to try to find their way to another village.
Yes.
And many of those children were eaten alive by wildlife, by lions, by hyenas, and so forth. And so the children, those that was able to make it to another place, guess what? They still had to be in fear of what? That happening to that other location.
Yeah.
And guess who was helping the Europeans point out where we're located at? The Moors.
Yep.
The Moors was doing, they were doing that. So to me, how they had to teach the young people at that time how to what? Go into that disaster recovery plan, just in case something happened. We have to do the same thing here in this country. All right. If you get pulled over by the cops, this is how you have to behave. Make sure that you don't make any jerking moves. Make sure your hands is in a place that they can see it. You make sure you communicate with the officer everything that you going to do before you do it. If he asks for your license, make sure you say, hey, wherever your license is, officer, my license is inside, let's just say the glove compartment. Okay, officer, do I have your permission to go into, you know what I mean? We have to prepare our children, and even we've been prepared on how to behave, how to handle situations should we get pulled over by the police officers. It's similar to what our ancestors had to do with the children of that time, preparing them for situations. And they had to, can you imagine 4 or 5 years old, they're trying to what? Make it to another village. They see their entire territories destroyed, burnt down to the ground, and they see their loved ones being taken off into slavery, being taken by these foreigners that they refer to as colonizers. So when we understand the depth of that, not a single group of people went through what our people went through. Yeah, we know that there was slavery in other territories, because people bring up the term Slava. We understand all of that, but none of them went through what our people went through. That's a fact.
Yep.
That is a fact. And the entire world, not just one nation, but the entire world benefited from free labor, benefited from what? Selling our people. That's why you see Negroes in India. That's why you see Negroes over in Japan and over in China, over in these different countries. This is why you see Negroes up in Russia and some of those places up there, because we were what? We were sold abroad. Free labor.
Yep. And I think about the speech that Thomas Jefferson gave, and he said, "Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever." And I think he even came to the realization that, he says that considering numbers, nature, and natural means only a revolution of will of fortune and exchange of situation is among possible events, that it may become probable by supernatural interference. But when you read it from a holistic standpoint, that one quote, when he said he trembled at that time, and I did some research when I ran across Joy DeGruy, she mentioned that he was reflecting over what that nation had done. And when he realized what they had done and realized that God does not sleep, he is going to have to deal with the sins. And God is not a God of time. When people say things like, oh, that happened in the past, God is not past nor future. He's infinite. There is no such thing as time for him. Whenever you've done something, you have to reap if it be you or generations forward would have to deal with the repercussions. So when I hear people say, oh, slavery is in the past, how is that something that if it was in the past, you would have made some form of restitution? That's true repentance to the very people that you have done this to. But because you say it's in the past and say forget, God doesn't forget. God sees all and he's infinite. There, like I said, there is no past nor future. He is time. So when people say that, I'm like, he doesn't sleep on his judgment. He's going to have to deal with this. And when you look at the things that's going to transpire in Revelation, these are the very things that God is going to deal with them, or Yah is going to deal with them on. The sins of their ancestors. Because ultimately, God dealt with us. Yah dealt with us from the sins of our ancestors. So this is something that, you know, I think with us coming to this awakening, it's also telling others of what they've done, to have them to repent. It's like God is reminding them, giving you an opportunity or room to repent. And guess what? They don't want to repent. We're still arguing about reparation. You'll give reparation and seed to everybody. But the very people that put blood, sweat, and tears on in this country to build it and make it what it is for free, and the trauma they had to endure through the process. Because the thing is, they never show you on TV what really happened. They never tell you in the history books what really happened. You know, when you think about that, again, the trauma of you and your child looking at each other and someone snatching you and your child apart, you know, or you having to endure watching a grown man rape your child, your son or your daughter, and there's nothing you can do. That's enough to drive anybody mad. You know, it's so, and that's why in the word it says you did too much. It's like you went beyond what the Bible said slavery was. Because when you look at slavery, slavery was just indentured servitude. I did that to pay off a debt. And then once the debt was fulfilled, guess what? I'm done. You restore, you give me some form of restitution, and I move on. It's 7 years. This was beyond the bounds of what God says indentured servitude was. So
that's right. And I want to answer a question too. Someone asked a question about the Moors. So I want to put something on your screen real quick before we pick up where we left off at. But I just wanted to share this real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just show here. Can you see this on your screen?
I got to add it. Let me add it real quick. Okay, I can see it.
Okay. I want to take you to a key document here. I have other documents that I can present here, but this is a great reference. Slavery and the Catholic Church. All right. Publication. This was written back in 1975, but this is page 52 and 53. I have another older reference, but I'm just going to use this for now. This is from a presentation I'm currently working on that I should have the video done pretty soon. But I want to show this here. Let's see here. Right. And I want to just show the people here that transaction, what we're talking about, and to answer that question about the Moors. So here it says, Papal, in other words, the Pope, grants to the kings of Portugal. Right now, when we understand at that time, right, the Pope had power supposedly of temporal and also what they call it, temporal and spiritual and temporal. All right. So according to the Catholic doctrine that the Pope, no one can hold the Pope accountable but the Most High. He was the replacement for Christ. Right. And so I'm not going to get too far into that. I don't want to steer the narrative away from what we're talking about. But here it says, Papal, the Pope, grants to the King of Portugal, giving authority to enslave the Saracens and other Christians of West Africa with whom Christendom is at war. Now, make a note of that term Saracens, because if you look it up, it means Arabs and those who are practicing Islam or the Muslim religion, right? So it says here, who is at war, 1452 through 1514. In 1442, a Portuguese captain brought to the Gold Coast some Moorish prisoners of war. Now the Moors, now we're still dealing with what? We're dealing with Arabs here, but the Moors were at war with um, Portuguese, right? With the Portugal, right? And so they had Negro slaves, right? And many times what happens is when a country conquers another country, oftentimes they will what? Bring that country into what? Into a servitude, like indentured servitude is pushed, and they were literally um, mingle with the women and what sell off the men to other countries and things along that line. You'll see that happening. So when you say Moors, right? We know that Moors in Spanish means black or dark, right? But here it's used to what make a distinction between the people, all the players here, those that were what um, spearheading the Arabic slave trade, right? But it says here, exchange them for what? 10 Negro slaves. So you see a difference between the two, right? The terms here. So Saracens, uh, Moors, you see Negroes, okay? But then it goes on to say this, and brought these back to Lisbon. A trading settlement was established at Lagos by 1444. It would appear that by 1452, the Portuguese were anxious to establish what? Their property rights. Now we're getting into even the laws of this country when you understand, and I give it to credit to Pastor Wilkins for bringing this point out. And I've really been focusing on that point of understanding the difference between natural law, right, and positive law, right? Natural law and positive law, and understanding property rights, right? And understanding that our people were treated as property, right? But nevertheless, it says we're anxious to establish their property right over the newly discovered West African territories. And so Pope Nicholas V, what's his name? Pope Nicholas V. Is there a coincidence that our people are struggling with Santa Claus, whose name is what? Nicholas, Saint Nicholas. This person right here, whom we've been told, right, that been through attrition of poor doctrine and taking our identity away from us, now giving us what? A Caucasian Christ that's in the image of Nicholas. All right. So it says was approached and was apparently led to believe that these territories of the Guinea Coast were inhabited by Saracens and other enemies of Christendom. There is no other explanation of a series of papal documents which applied the well-known contemporary rules of war to the situation in West Africa. And here's the kicker. Whereas the Portuguese were well aware the local Negro inhabitants were not Saracens, that shuts down anyone trying to say that they were Muslims, because if you just look up what Saracens is, and you'll see my point. And it says they were not Muslims. So we were not practicing Islam, and we're not the enemies of Christendom. Why? Because it's proven through the oral traditions and through the traditions of the Igbos, and some of the Dahomey people, the Limbas, and we could go right down the list of the Israelites that were there. Said that they were not enemies of Christendom. Why? Because they were practicing they were practicing Torah. They were practicing Torah, honoring the Shabbat. When you start understanding the Mavumba's tribe and some of the other ones that are out there, I could go right down the list of them, but I'm not going to get into it right now. But it says that what? We were not Saracens. In other words, we were not Arabs, we were not Muslims, and we were not enemies of Christendom. So I just wanted to bring that point out to answer that question. And I hope that helps bless someone, that person that asked the question. So I just wanted to just kind of show that there, and I'll put my other presentation back up.
You know what? And that's so interesting. I'll tell you at the end, one of the things I am going to do when I come that direction, I do want to go to the ports of Jamestown. I've never been. and I want to go and just, I mean, see it. I've never seen it before. And I know it has to be something to see because, again, that was the first port our ancestors were brought on. Like we were, that was the first port, right? Jamestown was the first. Um, I want to see it for myself. I want to see it for myself.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's how can I put it? It's very somber, but it can be a heavy. It can really be heavy on you because even when I went to the slave graveyard out in Savannah, Georgia, it's one thing to see the church that our ancestors had built, all right, and then to see that they built this church to make sure that we have a place, a bookmark to show that we were educated people,
Yep.
right? That we were writing Hebrew, contrary to what many may try to say and try to do to try to downplay the heritage of there. And that's going to be addressed another time. I'm not going to let that slide. But nevertheless, when we understand that place, and this is why I take it personal, because my uncle pastored at that church, James Wesley Carr. And guess what? And our ancestors, all of us are tied to that place because at the time that it was built, 1773 is when the assembly started coming together. Guess what? That's when the colonies were still what? Small.
Yep.
So they had over 4,000 members at this place. So when you understand that, and then when I went to the slave graveyard, I'm telling you, it is nothing like I can't even explain it. I mean, even how they insulted our ancestors. Now, truth be told, right? This is how they would do it during those times. Like slaves, let's just say plantation A over here, and you have plantation B over here. What they would do is they would take the slaves that died on plantation A and bury them over at plantation B,
Wow.
just to make sure that there's no connection.
Wow.
And so because of that, guess what? You see how they desecrated the burials. When I went out there, I'm serious. You can smell your way to the burials.
You told me that.
You can smell your way. It was so bad that my stomach started hurting. It was so bad. I mean, I got it on camera, but it's nothing like seeing it in person.
I do
You
want to
see the lynching tree out there. I seen the lynching tree. I showed you the lynching tree. It's unbelievable how disrespected and how insulting how our people were treated. And those were the ones that at least were buried.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So imagine the ones that weren't buried. Imagine the ones that were eaten alive in the woods. Imagine the ones and that was subjected to all kinds of tortures because in Savannah, Georgia, there are underground tunnels all through Savannah, Georgia.
Wow.
That they were doing all kinds of satanic things to our ancestors. I have a video with a restaurant down there. They discovered a tunnel down there and they tried to downplay it of what they had witnessed, what they saw, but you could actually see the change. You could see what they were hooked up into our ancestors.
Wow.
So it's a lot deeper than what we can ever imagine. And for those that sit here and try to downplay our history, that's why I get offended when people try to tell us what our history is and they don't have a clue of what they're talking about. They never went to any of these places, and if they tried to go to certain places like, Jamestown, they went out there for the whole sole purpose to try to debunk. Oh, let me show you that 400 years and trying to laugh at it. Are they laughing now? Are they laughing now or what just transpired and going to continue to carry out and play out? Are they laughing now with the coronavirus? Are they laughing now with all the things that are happening right now? Yep. So nevertheless, I'm saying all of that to say it's so, and we're just touching the surface of it. And I'm telling you, I've been reading the slave narratives since I was a little kid. My grandmother made sure that I read that. They made sure, and my grandmother would share with me stories of when she was a little girl on a plantation, working on the plantation.
Yep.
Wow. So I just wanted to just kind of answer that question, just to kind of bring it, show the people tell the people about more of our history and how it's tying into what we're discussing here tonight. So I just wanted to just kind of, touch on that real quick. That's why I wanted to show that transaction. So they know who we are. They know that we were not Muslims. We were not practicing Islam. They know that for a fact.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's why, again, we have to go deeper with our understanding.
Yep.
So again, with the lesson that I gave last night, that's on We Woke, I literally debunked the whole Judaism thing without having to use the books that many are using. Many will use like the 13 tribes and all those things.
Yep.
I did not mention it not one time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something, being from here, being in this part of the South, we see it, but we don't see it from. I had never been to Virginia to see that. Like we have a slave, kind of like a slave jail or a slave holding cell in downtown Memphis. And it's very, very, you really don't see it. It's dark and you have to really drive up on it. And then we have a section here also where, we have this, it was like an underground railroad here. I've seen the history here, but I've never seen it from a standpoint of where it started, and it's going to be something to see, because again, it's like they're trying to drown out our history so they can forget the sins of their past. So
I tell you, Memphis, when I went out to Memphis, for projects I had to work, for me, the eerie feeling was driving past the fields, the cotton fields.
Yep.
I took pictures of that. It was like unbelievable. Just the feeling that you get when you're driving through that, and that our ancestors are all through those fields. Seeing the cotton, and you see some of the old shacks out there.
Yep.
I was unbelievable. I mean, because I used to have to go out there to the reserve army base that was out there. And so I had to, do some work on a project out there. So I would fly out there, literally every week for about a 6-month period. So I definitely understand, the history of Memphis, especially when you start getting to the outskirts, you start getting, and you see those plantations out there. It's nothing like, we could talk about it, but it's nothing like when you actually see it for yourself.
Yes. What's interesting, me and my daughter, we were in, I think we were in Nashville, and they had this plantation tour. And me and my daughter went. It was like, we're gonna go, and when we walked up, you could feel it. And the guy had on the whole outfit and the garb, white guy, and he was just proud. And when we walked up there, you could just, sometimes you can walk up and you can feel it, and you can feel the sorrow, you can feel the pain, and it's like, you all are dressed up, and what you're symbolizing is the very thing that oppressed our people, and you're trying to mask it and make it look like it was a beautiful plantation. But when I felt it, and my daughter felt it, she said, let's go. I said, what's wrong? She said, you can't feel it. And not to, sound eerie, but you can feel it. And it's such a heavy weight. So I don't know how I'm going to respond to Jamestown when I get there. But I do want to check out Savannah as well. But you can feel it, and you do feel it when you go out here to some of those shacks. And like, it's one area, like I said, it was a slave holding cell, and it's down deep inside of, if you know anything about Memphis, it's an area called Harbor Town. And over to the side, you'll see like it was a holding cell, and it's down, it's like dark, and you really can't see it unless you walk up on it. But you can, you just feel the weight. And you think about when, when you hear in the Revelation, when they say they're going to cry out, the blood's going to cry out, when. And that's how you feel there. Like, it's just like, literally, like, you get that feeling of, when are you going to deal with the sins of this nation? So I just wonder how I'm going to take this going to Jamestown.
Well, it's a heavy feeling. I'm just going to be real with you. It's a heavy feeling, because especially when you know history.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel the cries of our people when you go to these places. And like I said, even with the slave graveyard, I mean, you see how the graves have been, some of the few stones that are there have been desecrated. But then you see the slave masters right next to them, burials are not next, a piece of a plot of land right next to it. And you see how it's well kept, and everything.
Yep.
But the slave burial, you see, man, I mean, that it's bodies buried on top of each other,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not buried deep into the ground. That's why you got the scent. And I mean, and the flies that's out there, I mean, it's like almost like apocalyptic type flies, that that are out there on that when you get to that area.
Wow.
It's that bad.
Wow.
And they have a tarp. When we went there earlier this year, there's a piece of tarp that they use to cover part of the graves that have been, that have holes in it. Literally, the ground is sinking. And so literally, as I got close to it, I was ready to pull the tarp off, but I couldn't, because that's how strong the stench was. And
Wow.
you literally see the lynching tree, right? They buried right up under the lynching tree.
Wow. Wow. This is heavy, but it's true. Like I said, we were taught in history classes as kids, slavery happened and then it ended. Pretty much. It was half of a chapter of a book. But it never goes into the depth of what really happened, because they don't want to show the words can't explain the things that I have learned just in the Israelite community alone, the history. And I know we got to talk about, the rest of the slide, and I know we got here, but I mean, this is a part of the sins that the Most High is going to have to deal with. And for people to open their mouths with all of the ignorance and arrogance in the world and say, yeah, slavery happened, but it was in the past. Who said it was in the past? When we're still dealing with the ramifications of it.
Exactly.
When we're still dealing with the hurt and the pain of it. We literally just here recently saw a man lynched on the ground, choked to death. And someone said that to me, and I said, wow, they literally lynched George Floyd in front of us.
I mean, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, you saw what happened to him. What you saw displayed there was what they were doing. As even back in the 60s, they were doing that. Literally, they chased him, right? Shot him down, and then they would lynch him. They would hang him. Well, lynching is the whole process, but they would hang him as a display, as a and they would cut up parts of his body and what, give it away as trophies.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other part that we don't hear about. They made shoes out of our skin, leather out of our skin. They made oils and all kinds of things
Mm-hmm.
that they used our body parts as what, souvenirs.
Yep.
And they were also, some were actually eating some of our body parts as part of a satanic ritual.
Wow. And it goes back into what we're talking about, the 400 years. It was really symbolizing the birth of a nation and how that nation was birthed. And how it got to the point that, I mean, it was so much sin. And when you look at everything about this nation, it was sin, and they hid it under the skirt of Christianity, which we know ultimately was their Freemasonry. And they hid it, and they made it seem as if, if you're a believer of Christ, you're Christian, you're gonna forget about it, or he's gonna forgive us, but you're still living it and walking and breathing it in your culture. You still right. I tell people this. I say racism is an ancient hate that goes beyond just skin color. It's a spiritual thing.
Well, see, even with the race, and I'll just deal with that real quick, and we'll
But
get
yeah,
back into the slide.
I know.
But we have to understand the institution of race,
Mm-hmm.
right? There was no racism during the time of the antiquities,
Yep.
right? The only issue that you would see in scripture about skin complexion is if you have blemishes on your skin. or if you was dealing with albinism, which causes a person to either be born without any pigmentation, or they lose pigmentation.
Yeah.
That's what you see in the scriptures. So that institutional race really, became really started really, building, so to speak, when we start dealing with the transatlantic slave trade. But
Mhm.
then when we deal with that whole institution itself, that is this institution that is still part of the renewed order. I'll say that again. It's renewed order, not a new world order. This is getting back to us understanding prophecy. We need to stop looking at the prophecies from a Eurocentric perspective. The Hebrew word for new and renew is kadash. Kadash means rebuild. It means renew, to make anew. So, and then when we see the word order, the Hebrew word for order, the primitive root is arak. You also have the word darak, right, which comes from the primitive root arak, right? It means order. It means manner. It means path. So when we say new world order, actually we're dealing with what? A renewed order, right? When we deal with the institutional race, we could deal with the Roman caste system,
Mhm.
right? So when we understand that, so what did it do? They used this system to further what? Change who we are, change our identity.
Yep.
They created a social identity for the entire world.
Mhm.
This institution placed a point of emphasis to make sure that there's what? A separation between the conquered, right, and those who got conquered, those who were enslaved and those that have enslaved them. And that's a fact. You can look it up. Audrey Smetley, she did a great writing on that. She's an anthropologist. She did a writing on that, right, and pointed out that all of the anthropologists know that the institutional race is a joke, right? So the real races are those that created the system. So what did they do? They created an object, and now they have all of our people rallying behind an object, right? Saying, hey, black, black, black. But what about our culture?
Yep.
Because it's not a black and white issue. It is a culture issue. And I'll say it again. This is why we don't see the Indians from India, who's just as dark as us, right? And some of them are darker than us.
Correct.
Some of us, right? Right? Are they dealing with what we're dealing with?
Nope.
Do you see them being a one cop stop from being what? Killed,
Correct.
being murdered, being lynched? Not at all. So that tells you it's not a skin complexion issue. The issue is a culture issue.
Mhm.
What was the culture? What did they teach about our people? They taught that our people were animals, that we were beasts. I've been to Iran. I've been to Bahrain. I've been to some of those places, and they literally were surprised about how educated that I was
Wow.
when I met them, because on their television screen they're still watching Amos and Andy,
Wow.
the stereotypes of our people back in the 40s and 50s.
Wow.
So again, that's why when Deuteronomy says we are a byword, we are a proverb. In other words, songs will be sang about us. They'll come up with all kinds of folk tales about us, name calling about us. We're the only community that has dealt with what we're dealing with. No other community has gone through what we've gone through. The
Mhm.
ridicule is all right for the Jewish community to say that they are Israel, and they will tell you, even in their doctrine, that they're not the blood descendant, they're not the aboriginals to the land of Israel. But when we start proving and we got historical facts of who we are demonized. Why? Because that's still fulfilling what? The scriptures.
Yep. So I don't want to stop you. I know you still have some more slides. I pulled it up, but I mean, you said, a mouthful with a nation. It's a nation. It's a culture that they're attacking, because you have other groups that have skin darker than us. And me and you both know, coming from IT, you work with, Indians, and you'll see all shades. And you come across an Indian, from someone from India, their skin is just as dark as mine and yours, but they don't deal with the racism that we deal with. You don't hear about an Indian in the US being hung on a tree, but you hear about our people. So it's more so of an attack of culture and not necessarily a race or color. It's more of a culture. So I definitely agree with you on that. That was a great point.
And so, even with what we're going into here on the presentation, what you see up on the screen, it says the primary language of Great Britain is the English language. Remember in the scripture that I pointed out, it says the mouth of the lion. Right now, we're dealing with what? The language. The commonality is the language. The English language is the lingua franca of today. Right? Every country has to what? You have to learn English, regardless of what's the main, the native tongue of that area. You have to learn English around the world. So we see here the prophecy is that what? The English language is going to be the dominant language
Hmm.
of all of the countries, right? You see Russia, right? They speak English. Every politician around the world has to speak what? English. Okay, so let me go back into here and just to deal with what we pointed out. So let me go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 7, and I won't take a lot of time with this. It says, "And it was given unto him to make war with the saints." That's a key word right there, because that word "saint" never included us in that definition. That is a Catholic word, and I'm going to prove it to you. And it says, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds, right? That's dealing with what? People and tongues, right? But when we understand this, this is dealing with Israel. This is not a generic term of all the nations, because guess what? They already have their territories and they took territories already. But the key is Israel, the language, the tongues. Okay, so again, it was given unto him to make war with the saints. The etymology dictionary definition of the word saint means this. I'll pull it up real quick. It says a saint, a holy relic, holy, consecrated, right? But then it goes on to say adopted into most Germanic. Then it goes on to say originally an adjective prefix to the name of what? A canonized person. That is key. The name of what? Of a canonized person, right? By the 13th century, it came to be regarded as a noun. But that's the key, the name of a canonized person, right? So when we understand that the etymology dictionary says the word saint is the name of a canonized person. So let's deal with the steps of sainthood real quick, and I'll bring all of this in together. So saint, it means this: for all those beautified, both martyrs and confessors, to be canonized, one miracle is required. It must be proven that this event took place through the intercession of the blessed and after the date of his or her beautification. It goes on to say, the process of what? Canonization is very complex and thorough. A record number of saints have been canonized in the past 30 years, and about 2,000 candidates are being evaluated. So when you see that word saint, it's not referring to Israel. It's not referring to what the generic term that we're using it as right now. But I'm going to show you in scripture wherever you see saints, starting with what many call the Old Testament, which I refer to as the established covenant. That's another discussion in itself. But this is what the word is. It is quadash, right? And this is what it means, right? This is the primitive root word right here: clean, consecrate, dedicate, keep, proclaim, purify, sanctify, right? So the transliterated word saint is actually referring to Israel. And I'm going to show that. So in every verse, you see the word saint did not originally refer to Israel, but to the Roman Catholic Church. Right? So we just proved that. But let's deal with the bride of the serpent, and we'll wrap this portion up real quick. To the point of showing the blood drunkenness of the serpent. I mean, of this bride. Okay, so Revelation chapter 17, verse 5. Right? It says here, upon her forehead was a name written: Mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. All right. So we want to deal with a key word here. And I encourage everyone to make a note of this word sham, right? The word sham, wherever you see name, this is the word in Hebrew you're going to see. That word name means, right, mark or memorial of individuality. Excuse me. In other words, it could be a literal title, but it also means what? Honor, authority, character. All right. We see what? Fame, infamous, renown, report, reputation, glory. So it's important to know the literal names, but just as important is what the reputation behind the name. So when Moses said to the Most High, the concern wasn't about whether or not Israel knew the literal name of the Most High. They no longer understood what the reputation of the Most High, because all they knew was bondage. So Moses said, Most High, I need signs to give the people, signs to give to the people, so that way they know that you are more than just what? A name, a literal name. They need to know what? The power behind the name. So honor, authority, character, fame, renown, report. So this is dealing with the reputation of the bride, the scripture that I just highlighted. So it says, upon her head was a name written mystery, right? The Greek definition of mystery. It means a secret, mystery, and through the idea of silence imposed by initiation into what? Religious rites. Now we're dealing with what? Secret societies. That's part of the reputation of the bride. Secret societies, fraternities and sororities, the Freemasonry, the Fraternal Order of the Police. And we even see the church. You have Christian fraternities and sororities that are based off of what? The template of Masons, judges, right? Because every law enforcement has to what? Pledge to that badge, right? You know, the lawyers, they have to what? Pledge as well. You know, the doctors, they have to pledge as well. But nevertheless, not trying to get too preachy or anything like that. It goes on to say, in name written, reputation, mystery. Then we see Babylon the Great. The key understanding of Babylon, that word Babal, it means what? Confusion. I'll say that again. Confusion. Confusion by what? Mixing. Right? That's one of the things that Israel was told not to do, to mix with what? The nations that have done what? That made a pact that they were going to do what? Take out Israel, right? Erase its reputation. All right. That's another discussion, but we'll deal with it another time. But Babylon, Babal, also means confusion by mixing. So mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. So mother means the source of something. I'll say it again. Mother means the source of something. Okay. So here's the Greek definition of harlot, right? We see the word what? Porne. And from a masculine perspective, you get the word pornos. But we see what? Perversions. But oftentimes, many will default to a harlot as in prostitute, but not refer to the idolatry portion of it, as we see here in entry number 2. And then sub entry of entry number 2, it says of Babylon, an example, Rome, the chief seat of idolatry. Okay, because so when we see in Jeremiah chapter 2, it says Israel played the harlot. All right, that means that they got into what? All kinds of idolatry. And then it says they began also to do what? Do sexual rituals. It said they began to play the harlot under what? Every green tree upon every high hill, Israel played the harlot. In other words, they began to get into sexual rituals, phallic worship to the Queen of Heaven. All right. But nevertheless, the bride will be the source of perversion. Aren't we seeing that today? A lot of perversions that's coming up, and these different institutions that have what? Taken our identity and enslaved our people.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said homosexuality, was already part of slavery. Many of those slave owners were homosexuals. They were raping the men. They would buck break the men publicly in front of the people.
Yep, that's one of the very things they try to keep hidden in history. And
Exactly.
when I first saw that, it shocked me, because I think when I saw they gave everybody's seen that picture, and that picture traumatized me just looking at it, because You have a man and the slave owner, and you have his wife, or the mother of his children and his family watching to degrade him and take away his manhood. Like I said, they went beyond. I'm talking about, like you said, I always go to that one where it says you just did too much. You just went too far with it, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And so, even to the point now, we're going to deal with the word abominations, and I'm going to tie all of this together. The word abomination means something disgusting, right? And we see it used in two different ways. We see when we're dealing with eating what? Unclean foods, it says what? It's an abomination to us, right? In other words, it's not good for our health. Now, granted, the Most High do not want us to what? Bring these abominations as far as foods inside the temple. He do not want us to eat these unclean things. But what he's telling us that we're going to get what? The immediate penalty of that by what? Bad health. And ultimately what? A judgment from him for breaking what? The laws that he put in place. But then when we see it used in another sense where it says dealing with men laying with men and women laying with women and bestiality and all this other stuff. He said that that is what? An abomination to the Father. In other words, something disgusting. Why? Because homosexuality is anti-covenant. Because the original covenant, right, that the Most High created, right, with man and woman, right, the institution for us underneath the covenant that he established was what? Marriage. Right. So, with
Mhm.
that being said, what did they do during slavery? They contaminated marriage. Most of our ancestors weren't even married. Actually, not a single slave was married. They were shacking up. And this is why we have that spirit plaguing our communities right now. They were shacking up. They were not legally married. Why? Because if they were legally married, the slave owners could get in trouble for what? Sleeping with the slaves.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right. So abomination means something disgusting. So this bride will be the source of something of unethical things, be the source of it. Okay. Now, which leads me to Jezebel. Now I'm gonna move along with this real quick. Jezebel. How many husbands did she have? Because when we think of Jezebel, many people think of Jezebel like she was just this harlot sleeping around. That you know what I mean? That's what we think of Jezebel. But when we look at actual Jezebel, the person, the woman inside the scriptures, guess what? Jezebel was only married one time, right? I'm fast forwarding here. She had 3 kids. But then when we look at Ahab, right? Ahab had 3 kids by Jezebel and had at least 70 boys from other women.
Wow.
Right? I'm sure it right here, right? And we're gonna and this is gonna tie into the drunk, the woman that is drunk, blood drunk, right? Second Kings chapter 10, verse 1 confirms this. It says this, and Ahab had 70 sons, right? Said he had what? 70 sons. But yet, when we think of you know, Jezebel, we think of what? That portion of harlotry. We don't think about idolatry. So let's deal with the true spirit of Jezebel. This is her spirit right here. First Kings chapter 16, verse 31. It says, and it came to pass as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in those sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Baal. It goes on to say, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshiped him. So the name of Jezebel, the definition of her name means Baal exalts. It tells you that Baal was her husband. In other words, she was married to her God. And she had such an influence over Ahab to the point, and I'll show you here, First Kings 16:32, it says, and he reared up, in other words, Ahab, an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did more to provoke Yahweh Elohim of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. So he was just out there. He was wilding out, literally. So he made a grove, and grove from a Hebraic perspective, Asherah, Astarte, in other words, a Phoenician goddess, the queen of heaven, right? So he worshiped the queen of heaven. Okay, so Jezebel's true husband was Baal. So I'm not going to get into Asherah here because when you start looking at it from Ashar, from Old Iranian, it means universal law. Think about that term universal. The word Catholic means what? Universal. Christendom means what? Universal. In other words, generic. Okay. So I'm gonna fast forward here just to get to a point here. So let me here it is. Just the point I want to wrap up with. The woman drunk it with the blood of the saints. So we described the bride, right? Now we're going to deal with her blood drunkenness. And I'm going to show you with scripture that when you see saints, it's not referring to the Catholic Church, it's not referring to Christianity, it is referring to the Israelites. So let's deal with it real quick. Revelation chapter 17, verse 6. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus Christ, Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, right? So this is the key. Blood of the saints and the martyrs, right? Who are the martyrs? Those that are dying for Christ, the disciples, all of them were what? Murdered.
Yep.
They were hung. They had to deal with the spirit of Odin, right? That is the spirit of what? Sorrow, Odin, right? That's the Greek word, right? For sorrow, anguish, pain. But also that is the god of the Norse god, Odin. That's another discussion. So we see blood drunken, the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus Christ. All right. It goes on to say, all right, here dealing with the definition of drunk. This is the definition. Shakar means to become tipsy, to satiate with a stimulating drink. It goes on to say influence. That's the key word, influence. Be filled with drink. Drunk, be or make drunk, be merry. So drunk, shakar in Hebrew means to become tipsy, to be filled by the influence, filled with the influence. All right. So let's bring this home. The bride of the serpent became drunk, shakar, and filled with the influence in taking what? The life of the Israelites. Now here's proof right here. See, everything you see in what is called the renewed covenant, that's what I've always been calling it, since I made the transition our ministry out of Christianity. I refer to it as the renewed covenant. All right, but nevertheless, it says for the Hebrew definition of bloodthirsty, this is key right here. It says this: bloodthirsty. It means, right, we see the word dam, right, blood, but it goes on to say figuratively, especially in the plural, bloodshed. An example, what? Drops of blood. But then we see blood, bloody, blood guiltiness, blood what? Thirsty. Now you see how it's tying in. The bride of the serpent became drunk, shakar, and filled with the influence of what? Innocent bloodshed.
Wow.
Now let's tie this in with the scripture that I highlighted, right? 2 Kings chapter 11, verse 1 says this. And when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, rather, excuse me, I'm messing up the words right now. Ahaziah, right, saw that her son was dead, she rose and destroyed all the seed royal. It goes on to say, and when the queen and, my notes here, when the queen and mother Athaliah received the report that her son Ahaziah had been killed by Jehu, she immediately made her move to claim the kingdom of Israel for herself. Without hesitation, she killed all the heirs. That's key. She killed all the heirs to the throne, the entire royal family, and assumed power. Queen Athaliah murdered her own grandchildren. Filled with shakar, in other words, shakar, with a spirit of worldly ambition, Athaliah hungered for the power to rule. So in a murderous rampage, she eliminated all competitors, the royal seed. Athaliah was drunk by the blood of the saints. But guess what? Let's cross that out. She was drunk with the blood of who? The Israelites, right? I just proved it here. Gave you confirmation with the text. So Athaliah is drunk from the blood of the seed royal, okay? But she is simply a daughter, right? The United States is simply a daughter, right? The Roman Catholic Church is simply a daughter, as I proved here. So who is the bride of the serpent? Guess what? Judaism. And that's just the point right there. I hope that helps right there. I hope that helps people that are writing this right here. I mean, watching this right here, of just breaking down what we just talked about, that blood drunkenness of that woman, the bride. I just proved it with scripture that is dealing with Israel, and also the martyrs are those that are what, holding on to the law, which you could confirm this with Revelation chapter 12, holding on to what, the law of the Most High, and also what, the testimony of Jesus Christ, Yahweh Shai Hamashiach.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. And you showed the bride. Wow. Is anybody, before, I know a lot of people have been putting questions in the chat. I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask any question you want to ask to Pastor Kelly while I have him. And I plan to have him on here a little more. I know that I just started the channel, and I've been started the channel, and I just now brought him on, but I know he had been busy with some stuff that he's been uploading with his own channel. But now that everything is kind of settled, I want to kind of have him on a little bit more. But any questions that you all have? One question that just popped up. He says, was she an Israelite or from another nation? I guess they're speaking of Jezebel.
Jezebel was from another nation. She wasn't an Israelite. She was from another nation, and we could tell by her belief system. And Ahab basically converted, kind of meshed her belief system with the Most High.
Yep. Another question is, I guess, Deborah, and I'm not sure if she's directing towards you, but she said she's taking notes. He said the Catholic Church was the mother or daughter. Anybody remember? What do you?
Actually, as I pointed out, the Catholic Church is actually the daughter. And when we start understanding Judaism and the influence of Judaism, we start understanding the Jesuits. When we understand even the universities, the seminaries, you will see the Jewish community heavily influential on the seminaries. So Judaism is actually the mother, and Christianity, Catholicism, because Christianity still has the same tenets of the Roman Catholic Church, right? When we start understanding the Reformation, right, the number one issue that many won't talk about was the letter of indulgence, because the Roman Catholic Church was what? Telling people they can pay their way. They buy this letter to try to build up money to build their cathedral. So you can buy this letter and you can do whatever you want. That's guaranteeing you into heaven. So the Reformation movement felt like they were going overboard with trying to fund the church that way. Isn't that similar to what we see in the church right now with building funds? Yep. Hey, you buy this, you buy this chair, you buy that your nameplate to put on a brick and all those different things. That's what that all started with the Roman Catholic Church when we start dealing with the letter of indulgence. So when you tie all of that together, we see the influence from the Roman Catholic Church, but ultimately we still see Judaism all embedded in many of the things that's taking place, including Freemasonry.
I got a question. So what would you call Islam?
Islam is still a daughter.
Okay.
Because when we start really understanding Islam, we could see the Roman Catholic influence over Islam. And we could actually see some of the influence of Judaism as well.
Correct. Because you can see when you look at all three had a hand in the slave trade, transatlantic, more so because they had a hand, because if it was not for the Moors, it wouldn't have been because the Moors actually were the ones that sold us. When I hear most people say, Africans sold Africans, I'm beginning to see it different. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm seeing more so the Moors sold the Israelites.
You see, that's a very deceptive term, because again, when we're dealing with Africa, the continent, right? You had our people that fled into what? Other countries, other territories. Yep. So of course, we were considered expendable. So when they say blacks sold blacks into slave, or Africans sold other Africans into slave, that is not true. They were not selling their own culture, their own people that's from the aboriginal to their territories into slavery. And it wasn't the slavery that occurred in the transatlantic slave trade.
Hmm.
So it wasn't in the sense that they are using it. You had different kingdoms, different nations, different tribes conquering other tribes. So Mansa Musa had our ancestors as slaves.
Mm. Ah, and what's so interesting when we hear people like Tariq Nasheed talk about the history as if that was our history in a lot of cases, and he's actually talking about the history of some of the individuals that put us in captivity. That you just like it doesn't. You're actually going into the history of slavery that had a hand in us. And it just shocks me that that's all they talk about is the Islam. They talk about Mansa Musa and all these individuals. And the more I learn, the more I realize that they were the ones in most cases, not all, but in most cases, that put us in the situation, our ancestors were in. So it's like they're reading the history of the slave trader to me at times.
Yeah, and part of the deception in that is trying to, kind of like when we hear that narrative that was created by the white supremacists
Hmm.
about black on black crime. Every time there's a major situation that happens, like one of ours get murdered, get killed by a police officer, or a shooting like what happened down in Savannah, Georgia, when that racist went into the church down there and shot and killed 9 people, right? That term black on black crime began and was developed by them,
Yep.
right, to try to offset the narrative. And guess what? Unfortunately, many of our people began to grab hold of that narrative. When you actually understand the facts based upon what the federal statistics, white on white crime is just the same pretty much as black on black crime.
Correct.
Asian on Asian crime is just the same. Because most perpetrators are not, they don't even have the resources to go to other communities. So guess what? Many are what? Kind of lazy, want to stay within where they are.
Yep.
So right across the board, that is a deceptive thing. So when we hear that blacks sold blacks into slavery, that is a deceptive talking point to try to downplay the role of the Europeans played with on spearheading slavery among our people.
Correct. Correct. Uh, okay. I'm trying to see. I'm on. I don't want to keep them too late because you're actually in another time zone. Um, is there any more questions? I could take one more question from the chat. The first part, the I ain't gonna say the first because it may be a question here. I'm not gonna answer, but put your question in real quick. And if you have other questions, I'm gonna make sure that Pastor Kelly provides his contact information, his email address. If you have questions in reference to the conversation we had, I know a lot of people have access to his YouTube. I put the link in. I can put the link in. I'm gonna actually put the link in the description after I end the video. Where if you have not subscribed to his page, you can subscribe to his YouTube page. But while they're getting the question, can you provide to them like your email address? So if they have questions, they can reach out.
Yeah, the email address is Richardson_Kelly at Comcast.net, or you can go to we are woke now at dot com. Those are two areas that you can reach out to me. And feel free to, whatever questions that you may have, feel free to direct it to me. Our website is faceyourwall.com as well. And it has more information on what we believe as a ministry and what's our mission and things along that line. Because unfortunately, the day and time that we live in, we have to be clear about what we believe, because so many people are quick to try to mesh us into all kinds of groups. And there's certain things that I just don't condone. I make it clear I believe in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. We believe in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. We
Mm-hmm.
believe in the importance of the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
I do not teach that the Holy Spirit is a woman.
Yep.
I don't teach against the virgin birth. I debunk all of that stuff. I speak against those that, the doctrines of that. So certain things we have to be clear about those things. And I just want to make it clear that even on the whatchamacallit on the site, it gives more information about, what we're about. And
Yep.
we've been in ministry for 11 years.
Yep.
So I'm not new to this. I grew up Baptist, and then transitioned for about 8 years, 8 to 10 years in Kojic. Right. So I know the whole Kojic lingo,
Yep.
and then went from Kojic to apostolic. Right. So
Oh, you
I,
were. Oh,
I was there. So you know what I mean? And guess what? I could preach, but I transitioned from all of that because to me it's all about teaching, and I
mhm.
don't want our people to hear me and they leave out of there. All they could do is say they feel good, but they can't remember what I taught about.
Okay. So, Beats Bro, Eric is in here. You know Eric, right? Eric
Uh-huh.
from Major's Church. He asked, he says, so did some Israelites sell other tribes knowing or unknowingly?
When you start understanding some, it was unknowingly, especially when you start studying about the Ashantis, and when you start studying about the some of the different tribes in that area. They had their own kingdoms,
Mhm.
and they fought against each other, but the slavery that they were under was more of an indentured type servitude. It wasn't dividing families like we see that happened to the transatlantic slave trade. When you do the history of those tribes and how they interacted with the Europeans, they had no clue on what our ancestors were going to be subjected to once they got past that point of no return.
Mhm.
So I'm going to upload a couple of videos on that. I have some key individuals that really gave some great lectures on that, and they really give proper clarity on that. So again, when you look at Mansa Musa, he didn't know that he was setting the people up for the type of slavery that we were subjected to. When you look at the Ashantis, guess what? They, they did not know that
Yeah.
they were setting the people up for the type of slavery that we had to endure. From their minds, it was more of an indentured servitude type thing. They
Yeah.
weren't thinking that we were going to go through the harshness that we went through.
Yeah.
So again, yeah, it wasn't from a perspective of what we think.
Yeah.
So even in scripture, when we see slavery, it's not what people think it is. It's indentured servitude,
Yep.
and you are limited to 7 years, really 6 years, to for a Hebrew to have another Hebrew in servitude.
Mhm.
So again, it's not what the narrative has been painted about it.
Yep. When you hear the chief in Ghana, you remember he did that apology, and he
Yeah.
said they just did not know that was going to happen. And I used to know this guy from Liberia. He also mentioned that in some cases the people there thought that we were over there getting educated, and we're still a part of the indentured servitude community, but we were gaining education, we were growing. They didn't realize that that was going on until much later. Someone got one more question, and I'm gonna close up the question. She said, were Hamites sold along with Israelites?
When we Quite honestly, I can't say that they weren't, but primarily it was Israelites. But I'm not going to say that it was all Israelites because um, we can't say for sure that there was none. But because of when we start understanding even just what I pointed out about the slave transaction, we see that there was a difference between the Negroes and between the Muslims and
Mhm.
the Saracens. And it said that they were no threat to Christianity. That means that when you look at, I got a book that I have, Africa and its inhabitants, and also the history of the world. I got those books right there. But when you read it, you'll start seeing what they mentioned. For example, certain tribes, and I'm using the Muvumbas, I'm making reference to them. They were referred to as being Black Jews because it said that they honored the Shabbat,
Mhm.
right? They were honoring the Shabbat. They were not doing anything on the Shabbat.
Yep.
So again, I'm not going to say that there were none on the ship, but I'm pretty confident when you really study the history, it was primarily our people, it was primarily Israelites. Because again, Many of them had their own territories,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we were what? Foreigners in their territories.
Yes. Yep. So I want to thank you again for coming on. I don't know why I'm saying thank you like you a guest, your family. I want to thank you for coming on. I thank you so much for also imparting into my life. You know, I talk to you a lot and you give me understanding on things that, you know, I have questions about, especially with this show. In a lot of cases, y'all, some things that you all see far as cleanup is, you know, Pastor Kelly kind of watching and saying, hey, kind of do this, fix this. So I do thank you for doing what you're doing and being the elder to me that I need at times. But we will have you on again, y'all. I'll make sure and have the link to his, and I think everybody knows about your YouTube, but just in case some people don't know, I'm gonna put that link in there for them to subscribe to your page. Everything you all saw right here is just a snippet of what he has on his page. Sometimes when I get prepared before I do things, I'll watch a couple of hits a video. One of the most important videos I remember was the one you did with Black Lives Matter. That's how I came across you, and also the one that you mentioned about Revelations 1, when you talk about the fleur de lis and all that. You know, I enjoyed watching that. So again, I will ensure. And what I put in there also was, you said Richardson. Wait a minute, Richardson underslash. I mean, you know,
Underscore, yeah.
underscore Kelly at Comcast.net.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so I put his email in there and I put everything else in there. Any closing words before we close out?
I do want to on another note, for those that may not be familiar, if you don't mind, is it okay for me to mention the non-affiliates
Oh,
or
come
what
on,
I'm working on?
I've heard of it. I just
Um,
yeah.
I want to just encourage everyone because I am working on have created a group, us and some other Hebrew Israelites from within our community came up with a group called the Non-Affiliate Party, and what that is encouraging our people, whether you decide to vote or not. That's not my goal is try to force people to vote and force people tell people not to vote. The key is change your party affiliation, come from up under the Democrats, come from up under the Republicans. If you voted as a Democrat the last election cycle and you decide that you're not going to vote anymore, guess what? You're still registered as a Democrat. And likewise with the Republicans, right? We need to start holding people accountable. We already know the history about Donald Trump. We already know the racism and things along that line. But we also need to understand Joe Biden is not free from this as well. You know,
Correct.
he has some really questionable decisions that he made that I can point out. So the goal is saying, hey, come from up under both of these political parties and just put on your ballot non-affiliate. You can literally put that on there. And what that says is that you are not part of any affiliations of any party. Because if you just simply put, in some states, if you put independent, and if there's an independent party that's in that territory, I mean, in that area, then they can by default put you under that independent party. So you want to make sure that you register as non-affiliate. The goal is 1 million people by the end of August. And why is that important? We in a very pivotal moment right now,
Mm-hmm.
because right now, President Biden, Vice President Biden, he is fearful of what happened to Hillary Clinton. You know how at the last minute the thing came up about the server, and then it came back and said it wasn't true. He's fearful of that happening, right? So this is an opportunity that we can unregister, and I guarantee you, if they just see 10,000 people move, they are literally paying attention to the statistics. They watching every bit of the statistics. And when you see something shift, where they see something shift like that, they are going to investigate it. So can you imagine 1 million of our people shifting and saying we're coming from out of both of those parties? That is even stronger, if not stronger than actually voting, because now we are sending a message, and guess what? It's a message that's that will cause them to what? Take action. We got to get out of this thing of getting caught up when they say, hey, you know what, we're going to work on better healthcare. Well, that's a generic term.
Correct.
What do you mean better healthcare? No, break it down to me.
What does it
We're going to improve job markets. We want the job market. We want to improve education. Well, actually, we want to make sure that for our culture, if we want to talk about education, we should not have to pay for education being descendants of slaves. We should have something going on that we shouldn't have to pay for education. Like many of the what? The Indians, as part of reparations for them, many of them don't have to pay for government for education for any university that they attend in this country. So
Yep.
we have to go further and hold these people accountable. And I believe that if you just change on your ballot, whether you choose to vote or not, change it to non-affiliate. Just contact your local areas and just make sure you change it to non-affiliate. So I
That's
just
what I
wanted
want
to.
to ask you at first too. Also, how if some people don't know how to, how would they change that? What would they need to do?
Well, that's the key. Go to, like, you could kind of go online and just look for your state and just type in voter registration. They'll give you locations of where you could go out and do that. You could do it at your DMV, and you
Hmm.
just go there at DMV and say, "Hey, you want to change your voter registration," and you can just actually just write it in. Some allow you to do it online. It just depends on what state that you are in, and whatever rules that they have there for that.
Okay. Okay. So I I'm very supportive of it. I missed the last meeting. I got to make sure I come to the next one. Um, but this is a great move, and I never understood it until you explained to me the importance of doing this. Because when we make a, it's almost like it would be a mass exodus in the voting arena. That if we did it, it would make a huge impact. And when you make impacts like that, you have a voice. That's how you have a voice. You ask yourself this question: why other cultures get what they want? They have unified, and they have one voice, and their voice can make a great impact on the political structure here. And then I understand how some folks, like, Hamashiach is our, our leader. We shouldn't be worried about voting, but they voted throughout the Bible. They had
Exactly.
judges, they had political systems in place, and sometimes they had to operate within the political systems they were within. Um, so you have to do something. Don't sit and just allow yourself to be labeled as a Republican when you're no longer a Republican or a Democrat. So I am gonna go do that. Change my affiliation to non-affiliation,
And
and
I'm going to upload a video to the We Woke. It's on my Facebook channel. It's in the non-affiliate groups as well, and it really explains. You hear some of the recordings about Biden, about Trump, but then I give you history because we know about the racism with the Democratic Party,
Mhm.
right? But what many people don't know about the Republican Party is, even though they grew a conscience and decided to say, hey, you know what, we want to do away with slavery, right? But really, it was primary focus was what? The Union, to save the Union. And
Yeah.
also, Abraham Lincoln made it clear that the Republican, right, the Republican, this Republican group, that they did not want to treat us as equals. They did not view us as equals. So we see that playing out all through through the history of this country. We were never looked upon as equals, and they
Mhm.
made it clear that they did not want to integrate with our communities. They wanted to keep it separate, and they wanted to make sure that the superior group, which they refer to as the white man, be what? Superior to all other communities. So they
Yeah.
made it clear. So I point that out in that video, and also I give proper clarity on the the Black Caucus, because the Black Caucus is what? Both Democrats and Republicans, and they've done a lot of questionable things that decisions that filled their personal pockets, but really didn't do nothing for our people. They're really not the voice of our community like we think they are. So that's why I really want to encourage us, spread the word. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook, and actually, there's a site I created called the non-affiliate, the non-affiliate party YouTube channel. Let me see here real quick. So I just want to get the information real quick. Let me see here. I want to make sure I'm not giving
If
you
you
wrong
have the
information.
link, send that link to me and I'll put it inside of the chat. Um, and also the video that you gave. If you is that video you did, is that just on Facebook? You have it on YouTube, right?
It's on YouTube. It's under. Let's see. Let's see. It's under non-affiliate party. You just look up non-affiliate party, and you'll see the video up there as well.
Hold on. I'm gonna type that in now and act like I can't spell.
So again, as she looking that up, I just want to encourage you guys. You know, whether you choose to vote or not, I'm not here to demonize anyone, because in the church they'll demonize you if you say you're not going to vote. And what I've been seeing in our Hebrew Israelite community, they've really been attacking people that said that they will vote. And when you look at Scripture, we have to be truthful. There was a vote that took place to crucify, to lynch the Hebrew Israelite Messiah. Right? They used the what Roman system to bring to vote for this capital punishment to be inflicted on him. So we see it there. We see the pluses and the minuses of this. So I'm not here to tell you to vote, and I'm not here to tell you not to vote. But the key is change your registration. And I think that we need to be unified on this. Not think, I know we need to, and we need to act now. And that's the official YouTube channel that I created, and the video is right up there that I just uploaded a couple of days ago.
You didn't give me the link, sir.
My apologies.
I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you. But it's a great community. It's a lot of a lot of people from the Israelite community. They're engaged. We've already started making momentum and traction. So if you have not, please subscribe to this. Share this page. To on your Facebook, on your YouTube. What I'm gonna get ready to do is feature this on my page so that I can show it as well. I can't figure out how to do this right here. I'm gonna do it from my phone because it's easier, but I'm gonna share this as well on my YouTube page so everybody can get to it and easily get to it. So on my community tab. So like I said, just like I said, join, look into it, change your affiliate. And the thing is, you said you don't even have to vote, just change it.
Exactly. When you understand that, sister, if they understand that right now, if we did that by August, 1 million of us did that, that will shake up the election. President Biden, Vice President Biden, rather, will get so scared that he will come looking for us. Right?
Yep.
And for our community, we understand we don't want to deal with color anymore. We want to deal with culture. We don't want to have anyone else to hijack our narrative anymore. We don't want all these other groups hijacking. Now you have trans lives matter, lesbian lives matter, all these different things, blue lives matter. No, we want to deal with our culture matter. Our culture that we had before we was enslaved, it matters. And we want to what? Push that as the narrative.
Yep. So I'm sharing this I'm sharing this actually on my community tab. So if you cannot get to it, you just go to my community tab on my YouTube page, and I'm sharing it now. Like I said, if you've not subscribed to that as well, because he'll be giving a lot more information on what's coming up next, what everybody's planning to, as far as, what's the next steps. And I'll talk about it a little bit more coming up here soon on the show, and kind of keep everybody posted of what's coming next from our side. So yeah, I'm actually a part of it. So I support it 100%. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Pastor Kelly, my bro. Like I said, I get to meet him for the first time face to face, y'all. This is gonna be interesting. So it'll be, like I said, next weekend. But again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming and providing insight. And like I said, family, this is not gonna be the last time. You don't have to go anywhere. I'm just gonna go ahead and end the live. But thank you so much. I'm gonna show the ending and then I'll end it. So, but thank you all.